Good morning, friends. I'm Dewey, and my Tech Talk topic today is what's going on with 5G cellular. 5G cellular stands for the fifth generation of cellular network technology. It was designed to deliver higher multi-gigabit per second peak data speeds, ultra-low latency, massive network capacity, increased availability, and a more uniform user experience. It should be understood that 5G cellular is not the same as 5G fixed wireless access, which uses cellular technology to intersect with fixed line services like cable and fiber optic, and thus will enable the delivery of ultra high-speed internet to suburban and rural homes and businesses at lower cost. 5G fixed wireless access is a highly important topic on its own, but there's not enough time for me to cover it today, so let's get back to 5G cellular. In a recent article at CNET.com, Eli Blumenthal wrote that U.S. carriers have had a history of twisting their stories when it comes to wireless technology. Back when 4G technology was young, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile opted to rebrand their 3G networks to take advantage of the hype that was going on. Ultimately, the industry simply settled on 4G LTE, one technology, one name. 5G cellular has similar problems. Differing technologies and approaches for 5G by cellular providers have made the 5G revolution more confusing than it might have been. I'll try to make sense of it all without getting too far into the weeds. With 5G networks, it's helpful to understand the three separate frequency bands of radio wave spectrum being used. High band, often referred to as millimeter wave, is the 5G technology that's been especially touted by Verizon, but also used by T-Mobile and AT&T. Verizon now has it up and running in 75 U.S. cities, including 60 plus stadiums and 7 airports. While millimeter wave is blazingly fast, it can reach well over 1 gigabit per second. This high-speed 5G struggles to penetrate buildings, tree leaves, and so forth to reach further than 500 feet. I'll tell you, it's sort of like a souped-up high Wi-Fi hotspot that's impaired by obstructions. Low-band 5G, on the other hand, has lots of range, but lower speeds. It's also used by all U.S. major cellular providers. Speed-wise, low-band 5G is now often faster than the present 4G LTE, but has the good coverage of 4G LTE. This allows low-band 5G to blanket large areas with excellent cellular service. Mid-band 5G represents the sweet spot of speed and coverage. In fact, the key reason why T-Mobile bought Sprint was the rather ideal mid-band spectrum that Sprint owned. Neville Ray, T-Mobile's president of technology, said recently that their mid-band 5G now covers 37% of the U.S. population. He predicts it will grow to nearly 60% by the end of 2021, this year, nearly 75% by the end of 2022, and probably 90% by the 2023. By the way, our daughter Julie has had T-Mobile service for over 14 years and thinks their customer service is exceptional. I might add that earlier years she had a lot of coverage problems. It's gotten a lot better, but they still can't get T-Mobile at their Wisconsin cabin in Cumberland. Verizon's mid-band 5G is called C-band, which uses spectrum in the 3.7 to 3.9 gigahertz range, while T-Mobile's mid-band 5G is at 2.5 gigahertz. Excuse me. The companies are in something of a tug of war regarding which is better. T-Mobile seems to be winning because its 5G coverage is better and costs less to deploy. Also, FCC power rules provide greater flexibility for T-Mobile's 2.5 gigahertz compared to Verizon C-band, which has only two power levels, one for rural location and one for non-rural. Here's a graphic by T-Mobile comparing their 2.5 gigahertz to C-band. Now, you'll take a note that the 2.5 gigahertz extends out 1.5 times further, about half again as further as C-band. Now, this also means that whoever has C-band, like Verizon, needs to have 150% more, or 1.5 times the propagation sites, to carry it. So it's more costly. Costs 1.5 times as much also. Though AT&T is sometimes thought of as the third U.S. carrier, they scored something of a victory in recent days. General Motors said on August 19th that it will add 5G connectivity from AT&T to its vehicles, starting with some models in 2023. This rollout is part of GM and AT&T's broad strategy to launch the world's largest fleet of 5G-enabled vehicles and is the culmination of a 2-year collaboration. GM provided the following graphic. Now note this kind of, what shall we say, concept car of maybe 2023 or so. It has a 33-inch wide advanced LED display integrated into a single large screen that spans the viewing area for the driver and incorporates driver information, details, infotainment controls, and camera views. So that'll be quite the thing to buy a car with a 33-inch wide LED display. Last week, MacRumors.com related results of a recent PCMag.com report that T-Mobile, with its widespread mid-band 5G network, has earned the title of the fastest U.S. mobile network in 2021. Here's a graphic showing the actual results. It's not particularly easy to read, but there are a total of, I believe, 9 categories, including the final speed score. There's download speed categories, upload speed categories, average latency, network availability. And T-Mobile won them all except the very first category of maximum download speed. Verizon beat them royally on that one with over 2 gigahertz, 2218.7 megabit speed. Truth be told, each of the 3 major U.S. networks have both strengths and weaknesses. I feel strongly that the best advice is that you choose the cellular carrier that provides the strongest signal where you spend most of your time. Bearing that in mind, let's take a look at the 3 lesser-known 5G cellular carriers. According to allconnect.com, consumer cellular is often recognized for its good customer service, Google Fi for being the best for international travel, and Mint Mobile for having the cheapest phone plan. Well, there you go. As for 5G cellular in Canada, telecomtv.com carried a report called August 2021 Canadian 5G Experience from the research firm Open Signal. Rogers Wireless, Bell Mobility, and TELUS Mobility are the so-called big 3 in Canada and provide the fastest download speeds according to the report. Rogers was named the outright winner of 4 of the 7 categories of 5G experience. The report's name, The report also noted that Canada just successfully completed a huge 5G spectrum auction in the important 3.5 gigahertz mid-band, saying this spectrum should help the country's carriers roll out 5G technology more quickly. The report concluded, perhaps realistically, that though accessing and dipping into 5G in places where it is available in city centers and densely populated suburban areas. It will still have to rely on the reach and availability of 4G just about everywhere else. Also, that there is mounting evidence across a myriad of potential 5G markets that domestic consumers are very, very wary indeed about paying premium prices for an unknown quantity and may well not subscribe to 5G until they are satisfied it is worth the candle. And that may not be for a long time. Kind of sounds like Canadian talk. And you know, Canada isn't unique. The US really has the same problems. It's just that Canada probably has more of the much more of the less densely populated areas. Meanwhile, in the US, in a PCMag.com report last Friday, Sasha Sagan and Steve Winkelman reported on testing of current 5G phones. Here are a few of their findings, including reporting, as we've heard before, that T-Mobile's mid-band 5G is making a big difference for up to 165 million Americans. Also, we don't think AT&T subscribers should care much about 5G yet, because AT&T's 4G network is very good, but its 5G network is basically an icon on the phone screen. Kind of sounds harsh to me. T-Mobile subscribers should definitely invest in a 5G phone now and look into the Magenta Max 5G phone plan. Another suggestion, Verizon subscribers should make sure they have a C-band capable phone. The report concluded suggesting that you can now expect to have 5G coverage wherever available with any new top-level or near top-level 5G phone you buy now or in the future. Quite a statement. Of course, don't just take it for granted, but be sure to ask whomever you're buying the phone from, just to be sure. And that's my Tech Talk story for today. And I am sticking with it. Well, listen, thanks for watching. Stay safe. And the good Lord willing, we'll see you next Monday.
Podcasts, the series, Part 2, How to Listen to a Podcast. I'm Hewie Poplock. This is part 2 of 3. The problem is how podcast apps are often free, or at least have decent free versions, so there's no reason that you can't try several and see what you think are the best podcast apps for iPhone or Android, because podcasts are everywhere these days, and there are so many topics to choose from. In recent years, the quality has risen dramatically as the podcasting space has grown up. Many people still can't quite figure out how to listen to a podcast, though, and I'm going to try to help you. Podcast on smartphones, Apple iOS, Androids, and then there are some that are cross-platform. Like browsers, you need an app to listen to podcasts. There are different podcasts for different platforms. There are some that are iOS only, there are some that are Android only, and then there are some that are cross-platform that can be used on either and Windows or a Mac. Here are some of the more popular titles. The number of podcasts listened to last week, you can see people listened to 6 to 10 were 19%, and 11 or more were another 19%, and 4 or 5 were 21%. So just in 4 or above are well over 50%. Podcast players on Apple. These are just some of the players, and you get the app from the App Store on an Apple iOS device. There is also an Apple Podcasts app built into your iOS device. On my Apple iOS iPad, here are some of the podcast players that I use: iHeartRadio, podcasts from Apple, Stitcher, and then TuneIn Radio and Spotify. Podcast player apps on Android. There are about 250 podcast players on the Google Play Store. Here are some of them. And again, here are some of the smartphone apps to play podcasts on your Android device, including Google's own Google Podcasts. So what you need to learn: how to listen to podcast shows, use the playback controls, follow or unfollow podcast shows, play episodes in order or play the newest episode first, download podcast episodes, delete podcast episodes, and mark a podcast episode as played. Each of the apps have their own way of doing each of these. So to go through each one of them, we'd be here a long time. But I am going to do a demo and show some of these items. So let's take a look at the demo. Let's take a look at the podcast players on my iPad. I use Stitcher the most, so let's take a look at it first. When it opens, you'll see that it shows episodes of podcasts that I've listened to, maybe not all of them. And then you can see that it's downloading some new ones. It's waiting to go get some more. As I scroll down, you can see, and scroll up, you can see there are little arrows to the right. And if there's a line underneath it, that line indicates how much I've already listened to of that podcast and how far into it that I've watched it. We'll click on one of them, and you'll see that it shows some information put on there by the podcast makers. And there can be links, there can be information, and there could be nothing. Now, when we click on Discover at the bottom, you can see that I can go and find other podcasts to add to my list, and I can follow or not follow. I can just listen to a podcast from a series and then decide whether I want to follow them or not and have them added to the list. When I decide on one, I can take a look at it, see some of the articles. I clicked on follow, and so now I am following cast. So each time there is a new episode, it will be added to my list. Down at the bottom are my controls. You can see I can move ahead within any particular podcast. I can go back 15 seconds by clicking that. I can go ahead 30 seconds by clicking the other, and I can go to settings. We're now on our iPad, and we're going to take a look at the Apple Podcast app. These are topics that you can choose for your podcast to listen to. I'm going to choose the Washington Post, and I am going to subscribe to it. It's now subscribed. And now it'll show me some information about it, and then what the recent episodes are. I can click plus next to it. It then downloads it, and I can listen to those. Going back to news. And we can see what's recently updated in my library. You can see the various topics under sports. You can choose the sport that you're interested in. Find weekly, fan favorites, hear from the pros, sports and culture, more sports, and you can choose again your favorite sport and find more information. So here under football, you can see if you're a football fan, you might be able to find a podcast on your favorite team, your favorite college team, your favorite pro team. I like to listen to iHeartRadio for radio stations, but I also can use it and do for some podcasts. One of the things I do, if you look at the bottom, I listen to WDBO in Orlando in the morning because they have what I feel is a very good news program from about 5 in the morning till about 9. It's actual news. And there are settings in the iHeartRadio program. And a lot of the radio stations and TV stars have their own podcasts, and a lot of them are on iHeart. And there's two there. Joel Osteen. I will click on follow him. And Mark Levin, I'll mark that as follow. Or are those two different? So I'm following both of them now. And then it wants, I'm going to unfollow Mark Levin just to show you, you can unfollow anyone at any time on any of these podcast programs. So now I've unfollowed him. And so it no longer will download and add his podcasts to the list of ones that I haven't seen. And it will not delete ones I've already downloaded. I will have to do those manually. But you can see there's a whole bunch of podcasts that I've downloaded. May not have been things that I was interested in. So it'll help me choose as well. This has been Podcast, the series, Part 2, How to Listen to a Podcast.
It's Ron Brown with Tech for Seniors. Today I'd like to talk to you about how wearable technology will improve your health in 2021. Now I have a big announcement for you, so please stay tuned until the end of the video. Let's get on with it. Now if you like this video, please click the like and subscribe. It really does help us with the channel. Thanks so much. Let's get on with the show. Most of you probably know me from Tech for Seniors, but in another life I was actually a physician, and I looked after people for about 35 years. So about 3 years ago I decided to make a presentation on saving your life with wearable technology. It went over pretty well, and I've given this presentation to over 100 different clubs and organizations. It was so popular I did part 2, and this year, because of the changes I'm going to talk about today, I will be doing part 3. I've had many testimonials from people email me or writing me back saying that they followed my advice in the video and it saved their life or prevented serious medical complications. So it's a good video. You should watch it, and I'll drop the link in the show notes. Let's look at the changes that are occurring in 2021. Now this is a slide I used in my 2019 presentation. In this slide, I want to point out that wearable technology is big business. It is a lot of money is going to be spent on wearable technology. And there's two things in this slide I want you to look at. This was a slide that indicated the wearable technology shipments for the third quarter of 2019. And there's two takeaway messages. The first is that although smartwatches are popular, the earwear actually was 40.7%, and the smartwatch volume was 17.6%, and this is of all shipments of those devices, not just with Apple, but worldwide. But the most important thing I want you to look at is the total shipments in that quarter was 84.5 million devices. All right, now let's look fast forward to today. And this is a different slide, but this is the fourth quarter of 2020. And I want you to look at the bottom of the graph here, and you'll see that the total number of shipments now are 153 million, doubled in 2 years. Now, in the graph, you also see that Apple now is about just over half of all worldwide shipments of wearable technology. Now, Apple doesn't divide it out into earbuds versus watches, but they did indicate in the article that about 50% of the sales of their wearable technology were related to their watches. So it is big business. These devices perform many tasks, but in this short video today, we're going to focus on cardiac monitoring, specifically electrical problems within the heart. Now, your heart has a main electrical trunk line coming in that provides power to the heart. And just as in your house, it has a circuit breaker panel. In fact, your heart has 2 circuit breaker panels. So in this diagram, you'll see the main trunk line coming in to the first circuit breaker panel. Now, this panel can actually fail as you get older. Just like you have your eyes and you have cataracts, you have joint replacement, you get your knee and your hip replaced. This particular circuit breaker can fail. Now, if it fails in the closed position, you don't get any electrical impulses to your heart, and it stops. This is a slide that shows a terrible accident where people were killed. And in this situation, probably what happened is the driver was driving along and lost consciousness. This is an example where your heart slows to a very, very slow rate. And guess what? You might need a pacemaker to keep it going. What is the incidence of this happening to you? Well, if you look in the slide here, you'll see that if you are over the age of 60 and you look at this graph, you'll see the incidence of pacemaker 1 failure in the over 60 age group. And look at the graph going up. Let's go back to the diagram again. Let's take a look at our circuit breaker. What happens if it fails in the open position? Then your heart speeds up and it goes too fast, and you may get into a situation such as this, which is atrial fibrillation. Atrial fibrillation is a major cause of stroke. Let's look again at the diagram here, and you'll see again, if you are 60, you'll see, look at the graph of the incidence of atrial fibrillation. It is the same graph. So it is so important to know if your heart is going too slow or too fast. And the 3 smartwatches we're going to mention today all have cardiac monitoring enabled. And these will actually all be approved by the FDA as a level 2 medical device. Let me explain this. If you look at the devices we're going to talk about today, they've had to go through stringent requirements and be approved as a level 2 medical device with the federal FDA. Now, this means it's the same as if you had an anesthetic machine or an ECG in a hospital. These all have been certified to be able to measure your pulse and detect atrial fibrillation. If you look at the second item on the slide, you'll see blood pressure recording. Well, the Samsung Galaxy 3 watch actually can measure your blood pressure. Not quite in the United States yet. It's been approved in South Korea, and it is on the approval waiting list in the United States, which should be this summer approved, so you'll be able to measure your blood pressure. Again, this is an FDA-approved device which measures accurate blood pressure. Now, fall detection and oxygen sensing are not FDA approved. In fact, there's no regulation or standards on those. So that makes the results fairly suspect. But the big announcement today is diabetic blood sugar monitoring on your watch. This is huge. And it's really going to change the way we look at these devices. Right now, the big input for these devices is through industry. One of the concerns that I've had is patients tell me that have got these devices, they go to their doctor and the doctor says, What is this? They don't understand the technology because this technology is being driven by industry. When we move into the next phase of these watches, which is going to be extremely popular with bloodless blood sugar monitoring, you're going to see this will be an integral part of diabetes management and also will be incorporated very quickly into the medical education program that we teach doctors. So let's have a look at this. Now, these are the 3 smartwatches that do cardiac monitoring and have been FDA approved. Apple has been out of the gate first with the Apple Watch. This has been available for cardiac monitoring since Series 4. They're now in Series 6. Apple is truly committed to the global market, and they have gone to all the countries around the world and have had the software for cardiac monitoring approved by the equivalent of the FDA. Clearly, they are the leaders, but the amount of money being spent now is so huge, Samsung and Google are coming up pretty quick. The second watch is with cardiac monitoring is made by Samsung, and this is the Galaxy Watch 3. This watch is a great watch, but has had problems because, of course, when it was initiated, it was launched into the United States, the cardiac monitoring hadn't been approved by the FDA. Today, in the news, there was the leaked document, and the Galaxy Watch 4 will be released this year, and it will indeed have cardiac monitoring, blood pressure monitoring, and blood sugar monitoring all pre-approved and ready to go out of the box. Pretty interesting, and it just came out this morning. The third watch with cardiac monitoring is the Fitbit Sense. Now, as you probably remember, Fitbit was bought last year by Google for $2.1 billion. And they're really changing the Fitbit line of watches into health monitoring devices. Again, this is a really big business, so you're seeing big changes occur. This is the watch that I own. I did a video on this called The Misunderstood Fitbit Sense. And the reason is because this philosophy on this watch works a bit different. I didn't like it initially and was going to take it back and get my money back. And then when I realized how it does work, it's fine. And I made this video that has had just under 20,000 views. So these are the three watches that have cardiac monitoring. And let's look at what's coming up. So this is an article that came out on the Wire service in January of 2020, a little over a year ago. And this was a research article on a group of people from the Samsung Advanced Institute of Technology, or SAIT, and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT. And this group of people was able to use a piece of equipment to measure blood sugar without touching any bodily fluids. They were actually able to measure it through the skin. No body fluid contact. Never been done before. I immediately knew the significance of this article. This is going to change the way we practice medicine. Watch what's going to happen now. They use this piece of equipment called a Raman spectroscopy to measure blood sugar accurately through the skin without any contact with bodily fluid. Well, it's just a matter of time before you can take this piece of equipment and you can make it smaller and fit it into a watch. And I predicted that this would take about a year or two, and you're now seeing that it's coming. Both the Apple Watch Series 7, which is going to be out this year, has strongly been rumored that it's going to be bringing its blood sugar measuring capability, and of course the leaked document this morning with the Samsung Galaxy 4. So this is coming. There's also been some patents from no-name brands that are trying to get in as well. So we're seeing a lot of activity, and I am so excited because this is going to change the way we manage diabetes. Let's look at that. So let's look at the staggering costs of diabetes. There are 30 million Americans with diabetes, and the cost of this is $327 billion. So let's look at this closely. All right, let's look at the costs on this. The cost of diabetes monitoring with testing strips is about $1,000 a year. Diabetics have to measure their blood sugar with glucometers, which involve testing strips. Then there's the initial purchase of the machine. Now, if we look at this let's look at 30 million people, and you have $1,000 about $1,000 a year for 30 million people. That's $30 billion in that year. Now, remember, these are consumable items, and that is over a 3-year period going to be what I calculate as $90 billion. Let's look at let's take the Apple Watch as our diabetic management, and that would be $400 for 30 million people, and that's about $12 billion. Now that's going right into Apple, right? But that's a fixed cost over 3 years. So if you take 90 over a 3-year period, what's the cost to the insurance company and the general public? If you take 90 minus 12, there's a savings of $78 billion. This truly is the Holy Grail. Now, I'm an old guy. When I graduated from medical school, we didn't have glucometers. We measured diabetes by measuring your urine, or occasionally we did finger prick to measure your blood sugar. I saw the whole technology of glucometers come in. First of all, we only used them for very severe cases, and then they became a gold standard for the treatment of diabetes. This is what we're dealing with now with the new technology for measuring blood sugar with your watch, and it's a pretty exciting time, and it's going to make a big change in how we practice medicine, and certainly for those people making the equipment, it's going to make people a lot of money. It's the Holy Grail. It's Ron Brown with Tech for Seniors. How wearable technology will improve your health in 2021.